Hey, this is Wes from the Quad Pod, episode 1. Just jumping in before we actually get started to let you know that, yes, there are audio issues. You'll hear me being muffled. You hear at one point Max will be super loud and then go to a normal volume, and Alec will be kind of quiet throughout. Did what I could without spending way too much time, a whole week on editing it. So, putting it out there because we need to get started. If we don't start this, we're not going to continue this, and I do want this to continue. We'll continue working on audio issues, though. But hey, hope you enjoy. Here it is, Quad Pod Episode 1.
So lean a little on your friends, they will carry you. Shelter from the stormy nights. Lean a little on your friends, they will guide you through. You know you're gonna be alright.
Hello and welcome to the Quad Pod, where we talk about everything you listen, you read, you watch, or you play. All the fun, nerdy stuff. My name is Wesley. I'm joined by Alec,
Hello.
Max,
Hiya.
and Simone.
Ahoy, ahoy.
So, if you're new to this, what we do is we talk about each one of us have a topic we bring in of nerd stuff that one of those 4 categories: listen, read, watch, or play. And we pretty much just spend our time, talk about it, and then we move on to another topic. And it could be anything from pinball machines to the latest and greatest Star Wars movie, which we won't be discussing today.
I'll touch on it.
Yeah.
Of course, not.
We'll try
So
not to touch
today,
on it.
it's going to be Stranger Things 2, the newer release movies, which are on audiobook, and our first topic, brought to you by Simone, it's going to be the movie Coco.
Oh my god. So, okay, what happened was, Tuesday, what's today, Wednesday? Wait, I don't know what day it is, but on Tuesday, I went and saw Coco, because, that movie came out a few years ago. I guess now it's been like 2 years. Called The Book of Life. Is about Day of the Dead. I love that movie. It's like my favorite movie of all. One of my favorite movies of all time. I have the fucking soundtrack on vinyl. I love it so much. So everyone was telling me that this movie is similar to it, but once I saw it, it's not. It's dealing with Day of the Dead, but and I think that's usually where people just draw the main comparison is that there's a lot of Mexican and culture in it.
I'm sure like a lot of people look at a movie trailer and think, okay, so that's what the movie's about, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think people just kind of do that. But Coco's so good. And it's like Disney, so it has that Disney, like, touch your heart, make you wish you were a kid again kind of stuff, but to the nth degree. Because, like, I've been sort of dealing with, missing my mom and stuff like that. So when I saw that movie, which is about the afterlife and Day of the Dead and all that. Oh man, it touched me right in the heart, fam. It was so good. And the soundtrack is so good. I've been listening to the soundtrack like nonstop. I don't even speak Spanish that well, but like, fam, the soundtrack is so good. And like, it's beautiful. There are moments in the movie like someone goes to pour something into a glass and it looks real. Like it looks like I thought I was looking at like a real picture, like a real movie. That's how good the CG looks. And I looked over to my friend and I was like, oh my god, like it looks so real. I couldn't get over it. And it's like this kid's movie. It was really animated and quirky and crazy, but there are moments like that where I'm just blown away by how like, crystal clear and pretty it looks. It was such a good movie.
Just a labor of love on the creators' parts that they definitely put their care into making that movie.
Yeah, it really is. I love that so much. And it's all, I think most of the cast was Latino. It's such a, I love stuff like that. And apparently it was a huge hit in Mexico. White people, I'm not trying to be racist or whatever. White people were like, oh my god, Mexicans are gonna hate it. But everyone in Mexico loved it. Like everyone I work with, they're all like Latino and stuff, and they loved it too. So it was such a good movie. I recommend it to like everyone.
It's kind of like one of those things where it's like you want to be careful about it, where you're not quite sure.
Mm-hmm.
When you're adopting a culture and telling a story that's maybe not necessarily where your background is from, like whether or not it's being done justice. And I think we're at a point right now where everybody's always going to be like, it's a kind of a constant high alert, and I don't want to get too like deep into politics or anything, but
Yeah.
it reminds me a lot of when Kung Fu Panda came out. You know,
Mhm.
you heard stories about how popular it was in China and how like some Chinese directors were even frustrated that a bunch of Americans told a better Chinese story than a lot of their own movies.
Oh no.
Oh boy. No, yeah, definitely. I think it did the Day of the Dead justice and all that stuff. It was so good. It was
Yeah.
such a good time.
Well,
And like, I guess it's that Disney kind of thing where the music is addicting, the colors are bright, kids love it, adults love it. But I feel like Disney can't really go wrong. They use the same formula for most of its movies, like touching, heartfelt moments and whatever. But I really loved it regardless.
Cars too.
Well, you gotta say Cars too.
Oh,
Just because an exception has to exist.
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of true with like Moana as well.
Yeah, yeah.
God, I love Moana.
It's so good. That's another one where the soundtrack just killed me, fam. It was
Oh
so
my
good.
god. Like, and then like with Coco, I don't know why I completely lost track of it. Like I knew that it was coming out. I knew it had a focus on music, which for me was like, why am I so dense right now?
It's like the main draw is the music, I think.
I have heard good things about music, and it kind of needs to be just based on what I've seen about the plot and everything, like how important music itself is to the plot. It's like, yeah, it better have a bump and beat.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, like
Yeah.
music. Oh, good.
Well, that's something you can expect from Disney too. I think they're going to show a lot of care in that aspect too. I really do think Disney shows a lot of care in things that a lot of other studios don't really get a handle on too. And I think you can see that too when they get their hands on their franchises. I mean, yeah, they're kind of turning into that mega corporation, but I mean, you know, they get their hands on Marvel, and then you see Avengers comes out a couple years later, and then they get their hands on Star Wars, and then that's got, you know, the fresh new life that's in it right now. And
Yeah, Disney has the way of just turning everything into an adventure. Like a good, like when you go see a Disney movie or a Star Wars, Marvel, whatever, you expect that same like recipe they use for all their movies. And so I'm pretty much never let down whenever I go see a Disney or like Marvel or whatever. I'm pretty much
Well, the
always
thing
know
is,
I'm gonna leave
with
happy.
with a lot of these studios, you think about Marvel and you think about Star Wars and you think about Pixar. You don't hear a whole lot about, oh, this is what the executives wanted. Like each one of those studios will talk about how free they are to do what they want and make what they want. And Disney is just kind of, you know, mom and dad's pockets helping them with the paychecks and moving it along. Because Marvel is like been close to and has actually hit bankruptcy on a number of occasions. So the fact that they have Disney backing them now and keeping all of these characters and stories alive has really helped to propel the superhero momentum that they started.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know they were close to bankrupt.
Oh yeah, the '90s were not good to Marvel.
The 90s was, yeah, they tried to do a lot of different things in the 90s that just didn't work out. It was kind of after, well, they got to the 80s where, you know, it was after that golden age, silver age of comics when everybody was finding out, you know, that you know, hang on to your comics because they'll pay for your kids' college someday. And then they started coming out with like all of these different variant cover issues of their first edition comics, and people were buying those up at the end of the 80s, and then, you know, finding out that they were actually able to print so much. You know, what made those golden age and silver age comics so uh, valuable, the fact that there weren't that many issues that were printed. Well, when they're printing out millions of variant copies of the same comic, they're essentially worthless, and people had to stop buying comics after that. They just, you know, when you realize that that's not going to pay for your kids' college, nobody bought comics anymore. In the 90s, they just suffered.
But I think we are still hitting in an area too where Disney, the formula might be running dry.
You think?
I think so. A bit in the Marvel movies, especially. There's been a bit too much, I guess I would say.
Oh yeah, they've been like pumping those movies out, haven't they?
And then like also like Doctor Strange. I thought that would have been a perfect like horror movie,
Mm.
like or horror ish on the
Mhm.
side, but they still threw in these little jokes, and for me they worked. But I can see where that's happening more often.
Yeah.
I think those movies are running to a moment where they could branch into different genres,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
it's it's kind of the same story, but with different settings and characters.
Sometimes you just
Which it's
gotta
all still
know.
enjoyable, but you gotta wonder if they're gonna implode on themselves at this rate.
Mm.
Sometimes you just gotta know what's working and what isn't. I mean, Thor was supposed to be a fantasy series, and in the fantasy thing just was not working out for them. They were trying to take a concept that at its heart was kind of ridiculous, but you have to have people buy into the ridiculousness too if
Yeah.
you wanted to take it
Mhm.
seriously. And I
Yeah.
think, and I love Thor 3 so much because I think they finally figured out it's like, taking ourselves way too seriously is not working at this point. Let's just have a hell of a lot of fun making a Thor movie.
Yeah, I loved Ragnarok, but I
I
do think
love
they
it.
could have still been a little bit more serious with it. I think they might have gone too far in the opposite direction in a couple of scenes.
Well,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, you kind of see those treatment of those characters where, Marvel's done a lot of fan service in the past, and they try to stay true to a lot of characters. I mean, they screw up a lot of them to be sure. I mean, I think a lot of that is unavoidable when you're trying to get into the creative side, but I think you try to
And hit
stay,
quotas.
yeah, and I think you try to stay true to the characters to the most part. And when you see, the treatment of the Warriors 3 and the rest of Asgard, most of the movie doesn't even take place on Asgard. It's just, it you for those classic Thor fans, they kind of threw them by the wayside, I think, and kind of threw them under the bus. But
Yeah.
as far as going to a movie to be entertained and have a great time, Thor 3 definitely succeeded more than any of its other iterations in its own little franchise, just the Thor movies itself. But
Well, we kind of got off the topic
Yeah,
of
we
Coco. And I think that might be linked. We'll find out. Um, but I don't know. Do we want to take a quick break?
Let me see. No. I mean, my phone's at like 14%, so I prefer to keep going. But I don't know if your
Okay.
laundry's done or if you want to.
Yeah, I'll just have to switch to mobile real fast.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
waiting for the little beep boop for him to sign back in.
Yep. And then when he's back, we'll jump right on to his topic.
Okay, okay,
Been able to
smoky.
hear me okay this whole time?
Yeah, sound great.
Perfect.
Oh,
Hello?
okay, there we go.
Wow, you're really loud.
Oh, sorry. I haven't used my phone a couple of times, so apologies for not knowing what the settings were going to be like.
Well, you're right.
Yeah, you're peaking.
I can turn.
My,
But where are we moving to next for topic?
It's
Yours.
if you trust the audio on your computer rather than on your phone, we can wait also.
No, it's okay. We've already segued. So I may as well start with Star Wars is the biggest name ticket. I wanted to talk about Star Wars, right, and Jumanji, and kind of go back and forth on those three films.
Oh, you saw Jumanji?
Sorry, what?
You saw Jumanji?
Jumanji, yes. I will give my opinion on that. So, starting off with Star Wars, I find myself in the unfortunate camp of having not enjoyed that film very much.
Mm.
Which is just sucks because I heard so many good things about it going in, and I know plenty of people who still enjoyed the music going out as well. And it's just, and the more I retrospect onto it, the more it's just like, I just can't bring myself to really like it as much as all of these other people and critics. And it's one of those things where Alec and I were talking about this a little bit. You look at the critical reception and how great it is, but then the fan reaction has not been
nearly as good.
Mhm.
And it's been kind of interesting being on this side of the fence, and a lot of people like maybe they point at me and go like, "Oh, you're blinded by nostalgia. You're too much of a Star Wars fan because it did things different or something like that."
Mhm.
And I'm just like, no, I had like legitimate problems with the story that had nothing to do with it being a Star Wars movie. Like I had no problems with the way the characters acted or how their character development went on or anything like that that they usually point out. There were just plot things that I felt didn't really work and kind of left me disappointed.
Mhm. Well, that's fine.
I mean, they're wrong, but
Yeah.
I don't understand why people want to please other people's opinions. But stuff like this, where people love Star Wars so much, and it's one of those stories or the franchises that they hold so near in their heart and they're obsessed with it. Hardcore fans, they really, I think people expect a movie to be the way they feel it in their head. So when they go see it and it's something different or something they weren't expecting, people like want to attack other people.
Yeah.
So I think it's perfectly fine if you don't like it. I mean, it's not everyone's gonna have the same opinion.
no, yeah.
I've kind of seen people in both camps on that one too, where it's, either they had, such high expectations because it's Star Wars and it's the new Star Wars and The Force Awakens was really great. Let's see how this keeps going, and then their expectations completely take them out of it because they set their hype train way too high.
Yeah.
Or it's that there was a lot of problems with this movie, and they were kind of blinded by their love of Star Wars and their need for that movie to be good, and that they feel like they have to justify some of the bad decisions that were made in it too.
Yeah.
I think I've seen people
I
in
mean,
both camps on
It's
that.
kind of an interesting dynamic. Yeah, it's like, did nostalgia blind you and make you think that a good movie was bad, or does nostalgia blind you and make you think that a bad movie is good?
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
I had to go
but
see it a second time just to make sure. Second time I watched with a more critical eye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First time I was like, maybe I just like it too much. So see it again, give it more money.
who I have a friend who did the opposite, where when he got out of it, he and I talked at length about how there were how basically the same things about it that we didn't like together. But then he said he went and saw it a second time because his mom hadn't seen it yet, and he said, actually on the second viewing it was much better. Um, I still haven't seen it a second time. Like, I have said, I personally, like, I'm not trying to be insulting or anything, but, I think I did enjoy watching some of the prequel movies a little bit more.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be insulting. Um,
Fine.
but yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things where maybe it was overhyped, or maybe like there are things that are like legitimately wrong with it. But by contrast, when we went and saw Jumanji last week, I went into that with pretty low expectations because it's like, oh, they're remaking a classic, and it's there's can't be as good because it just looks so silly and goofy and all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. Like I walked away from that movie with like zero complaints and enjoyed it much more than the biggest blockbuster of the year.
Wow.
And I think
Dang.
that's got a little bit of something to do with your expectations for those two, where it's where you can have Jumanji surprise you can just go and enjoy the movie because you go into it pretty impartial and you just have zero expectations for that, as opposed to
Yeah.
holding Star Wars and holding Disney and holding these big blockbusters to a higher standard that maybe an impossible standard to hold them on. At least until somebody comes to prove us wrong. And I don't know, I'm still waiting for the day that a movie meets all of my expectations and hype, but
I think you'll
Yeah.
wait for a while.
When it comes down to it, like Force Awakens, the episode 7, that one blew my mind. I absolutely loved it. I loved everything about that movie.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's what made it even harder going into this one. But with Jumanji, yeah, I just went in. It's like, you know what, I'm here to have a good time, and it was a good time. It really was. Like I love the cast and the different ways they interacted with one another and how they had to kind of portray a teenager in somebody else's body. Like it was just a lot of fun to watch.
Well, that's good.
That's awesome.
some of the little callbacks, I mean, they had them pretty sparing and pretty pretty subtle in the Alan Parrish callback to Robin Williams' old character in the first Jumanji. Its own thing. We kind of live in this age where it's everything is a reboot or it's an adaptation of another film or a book. The book adaptations, and in Jumanji was very much its own thing, which was kind of crazy to see in, like I said, the age of sequels that we're living in right now.
Yeah, it was kind of unique and refreshing, and I think one of the bigger things about it is, and then this isn't a spoiler, you can see it from the trailers, but a lot of it is supposed to be, instead of playing a board game, they're playing a video game, and they've been sucked into that.
Yeah.
And a lot of things that try to take that approach just do it so badly.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Jumanji did it perfectly, but they did it in a way that was like actually fun and somewhat knowledgeable of the whole thing.
There's still a little bit of a cringe factor involved. I mean, I don't think any movie can avoid that either, especially when it comes to video games. But I don't know. I thought overall Max is right, and they did that pretty well.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see it. I haven't seen it yet, and I've heard good things. Good things.
Yeah, like Jack Black was easily one of the best parts of that movie. Just everything that Jack Black did was amazing, and I've been worried about that guy. I was wondering if he was starting to kind of wear down and lose some of his mojo over the years. No, he was amazing, and I kind of sort of have a soft spot for Karen Gillan, so that was fun too. And I mean, The Rock, he goes without saying.
Oh yeah, I think that's pretty much anything anymore.
Okay, Light Yagami or Light Turner.
Kevin, I usually kind of take it or leave it, but he did a good job with this one too.
Well, I think Kevin Hart's a lot like, Will Smith, where you'll see Will Smith play Will Smith in all his movies. I think, Kevin Hart, you get Kevin Hart when he plays a movie also.
I
That's a bad thing. He's always entertaining to see,
And then
on film.
Yeah. and with that, kind of saying, I did want to talk about Bride as well, because I saw that, and I couldn't help but be curious, because two factors. One, it seems to be a major sticking point, or at least it was for a little while, with everybody going like, oh, the critics hated this movie, but I thought it was awesome. That had my curiosity, but then Alec and I also saw like props and sets and stuff when we were at Comic-Con last summer.
Yeah.
So there was kind of a personal connection that made the world feel a little bit more real. So I had to look into it and just be like, I feel a need to, because I was at Comic-Con and I just want to see, whether I'm on the critic side and it's like, yeah, this is kind of a bad movie, or if I was going to be more on the fan side and be like, no, this is great. The critics don't know what they're talking about. To be honest, I thought it was enjoyable. I think people are overselling it a little bit, probably just in retaliation to the poor critical reception. But it was enjoyable. The characters were very good. Will Smith was Will Smith as Will Smithiest, which that's not a bad thing. It's a very entertaining watch. There's a reason why he's been typecast as Will Smith.
Sorry.
I guess so.
Typecast as Will Smith.
Yeah. But no, the movie set up some really cool lore and a really cool world that felt very real and believable despite its fantasy setting, and it was really cool to see fantasy elements in a modern day. And I think, Wes, you've talked a little bit about that before with the Dresden Files, I want to say.
Yep, urban fantasy.
Urban fantasy.
Urban fantasy. It's a cool thing to see, and I know like one comment I see again and again when people talk about Bride is that it felt more like a pilot to a TV show than a movie, and there's definitely some truth in that. Like there are a lot of like little name drops or mentions of historical events that they never really elaborate on, which both does make the world feel like there's a lot more to it. It gives it more breadth and more volume, but it also is kind of like, why would you bring that up and not tell us more?
Yeah.
So I heard this week that they're working on making a sequel. I'm going to be very curious to see where that goes. But and then I will say, I can never pronounce his name right. Joel Edgerton, the person who plays the orc side cop, or partner, I should say. He was easily the best part of that film. He just brought so much heart to the role. It was such a joy to watch him.
I mean, if you have Netflix, pretty much it's free to watch it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, so it's on Netflix.
Yep, it's a Netflix original movie and out there for enjoyment. And yeah, I just, last week in the middle of the night, I kind of curled up and was like, yeah, I'm going to watch a movie and eat chocolate. And I don't regret the experience.
Yeah, that was where we saw it in San Diego. That was actually the Netflix setup that they had outside of the main convention center. And kind of like what Max was talking about, they definitely promoted that movie pretty fantastically, and that was one that we were pretty eager to see how it was going to turn out, for good or bad, just because it was a really impressive promotion that they had there for it. So they had that there with we were there to see more of the Defenders and Stranger Things, and Bright was just something that they had that was just in the middle of everything, but it was especially when we love Stranger Things and we love Defenders, that it's something that stood out as something that was pretty awesome and something to check out in the middle of both of those things that that we hold in pretty high regard.
Yeah, like I said, it's just the fact that we're there helped make that whole world feel more real to me. And I obviously can't speak to how that's going to feel for somebody who wasn't blessed with that experience. But yeah, an enjoyable, solid movie. No, not going to be an Oscar winner. Neither is Jumanji, but both of those I found to be very enjoyable films.
Oh, that's cool. But mentioning Stranger Things, like Alec did, that will be our next topic.
Man, it was so
We'll
good.
talk about play.
Yeah. Awesome transition there. But no, first we need to take a little commercial break. Make sense?
Yep.
I don't know. We need a name for this commercial break thing. Give me 3 topics. Give me 3 items.
Oh my god, I can't.
Banana peel turtle shell star.
Okay, the commercial will be about banana turtle shell star, right?
That's
Are you playing Mario Kart right now? Is that?
I mean, he said 3 items. That's kind of where my mind goes.
Okay, commercial break. Boom. Hey guys, hope you're doing fine. We're in the middle of the podcast, taking a break. There's a hot tub going on right in the background, so I gotta go have some fun with that. But don't worry, we'll be right back after this quick message. Hey gang, just letting you know that the music you are hearing, providing the interludes as well as the intro and the subsequent outro, are all from the same track called Friends by The Miracle of Sound. Just wanting to give credit where credit is due. If you want to check it out, definitely recommend it. Check out all the other work. Let's jump back into it. Oh, that was fun. So yeah.
creepy.
Yeah, you guys don't. I mean, listeners, you don't know what happened during that commercial break. We got a hot tub with a turtle and had quite a bit of fun. We went star watching, and yeah, some other things.
There's
Yeah, Rick Snorton.
Yeah,
don't-
banana
we can
was
talk
very involved.
Moving on.
But to get to the topic at hand is my topic now. We're going to be talking about Stranger Things Season 2. Oh my god. Okay, so Stranger Things alone. Like, I put off watching Stranger Things for much too long.
Yep, you sure did. I already know.
I knew it would be one of those things that like everything just seemed too perfect. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna go look at all these 80s things. Music, toys, comics, all these nerd stuff. And when I finally watched it, my god, did I just fall in love.
It's so good. It's
Dustin, I love Dustin. Oh, Steve though. Oh,
okay, I didn't really like Steve that much in the first season. What have you, second season? I love him so much.
oh my god. Season
But some
2.
of that needs to be complete sentences. Oh my god. Oh, that's how all the started it.
That's all you can say about it.
I mean, season 2, my love for Steve grew even deeper.
So good.
Like, I loved the way season 1 ended. And then season 2 jumped back in. I'm like, okay, how are they going to get everything still incorporated? And dear Lord, it did it for me. Like,
Yeah.
I watched season 1. I watched one episode halfway through the day on Sunday. Binge watched the rest of the season that one day. And went to bed so late.
Yeah.
Yeah, my experience with season 1 was like every so often I do like pizza and Netflix night where it's just like, you know what, I'm just going to not do anything. I'm going to order myself a pizza and we're just going to see what's on.
Yeah.
And I think Stranger Things had just hit that week, and I'm like, oh, the title sounds familiar. I probably saw something about it like online or something.
Yeah.
I only meant to watch the first episode. I watched the first episode. I was like, that was kind of fun. It's got my curiosity, and I watched the second episode, and then I didn't stop.
Yeah.
I binged the whole thing that night, even though it was already like 8 or 9 o'clock at night when I started. I just kept
Oh,
going.
God.
Yeah.
And
When I discovered it too, that was kind of the same story, except I forced myself to go to bed at 4 in the morning.
Right?
Oh
I had
no.
work the next day, and it was just like, I'm just gonna finish this one, and I have to go to bed, and I'm done.
Yes.
And it was the one where Nancy crawled through the tree into the upside down and got lost.
Oh
It
yeah.
ended on that
Episode 8.
cliffhanger,
Or
and I was just
7.
like, God damn it, how am I supposed to?
Oh yeah.
But I did when I was at work all day, just being like, man, I should have just played hooky and just finished that show. 'Cause that was-
I mean, that's where it got really tough. Was like season 2 was out, and I like 2 weeks after I watched season 1.
Yeah.
So I
You
had
were
to, I had to space it out. I couldn't do what I repeated, what I did the first time. So I was conscious enough to be like, okay, one more episode, but I still forced myself to go to bed after the fact.
yeah.
But season 2, dear Lord, like how they expanded on it. And I know there's the one episode everyone is disappointed with.
Yeah.
Mm.
I thoroughly love that episode though. Like,
Wait, give me a hint. I don't remember.
Say
It's
again?
The one that doesn't take place in Hawkins.
it's
Yeah.
the 11.
Oh yeah. No. I was like, what the hell?
um,
You know,
So confused.
I'm
Am I the only
going
one?
to counterpoint. Kind of like Star Wars. I'm also in the camp of people who were super thrilled about season 2, which is also upsetting because I wanted to be super thrilled about it.
Mm-hmm.
That episode is a cornerstone for sure. It was kind of frustrating to how much spoilery are we able to go in here with Stranger Things season 2?
let's go
That's-
full.
It's been
Full
out
spoiler.
since
Okay,
Halloween, so-
everybody watching has been warned now.
Yeah.
So my big thing with that 11 episode is like you spend the entire season just wanting 11 to get reunited with her friends, or just wanted to see more of 11 and her story.
Mm-hmm.
And when you finally do, it's this really weird episode.
Yeah.
And it's just like I understand like what it's supposed to be doing, like how it's supposed to be helping her character along and everything in character development. I have nothing wrong with character development. But really it's just like the whole time you just wanted to see 11 together again with her friends, and then when you finally get to the very last episode of the season, when it happens, it's like a quick hi bye and she's off again.
Yep.
But so much of the first season, like what made that work was her developing friendship with all the different characters, and it's like it was just completely not present in the second season.
Yeah, I want to hear your
See-
thoughts on this.
I think this might be part of. I think I can understand like that episode is such a tonal change for the
Yeah,
series.
exactly. He didn't really fit the
Especially
season.
all of a sudden she's in the big city, and we've had no talk about this at whatever. I think it might be setting up for like future seasons.
Right. I mean, that's exactly what it's doing.
Yeah.
That's another problem that I have with it, actually, is that a lot of the season felt like it was setting up for future seasons.
Mhm.
But what I loved about the first season was how complete the whole thing felt.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And this one, it felt like it was missing components because we don't get those until, they sell enough with merchandising to get more seasons.
Yeah,
Well, see,
Go ahead, Wes.
my problem is I still like that episode because for me it's goes so much into her character depth, like her character development, where she really needed to learn who she was and what she cared about. Like that was the whole thing in the first thing. She didn't know anything, and then she finally met new people, learned about other people,
Right.
and now this one was finally delving into herself. She needed to learn who she was uh, before she could really help anyone.
Right.
And I know there's still complaints there. They're still valid.
Right. Because like I have zero problem with character development. Like I love the fact that they approached that because that was definitely something that needed to happen. A big part of the
Mhm.
first season was what is her past, and I'm glad they explored it. But at the same time, I think they could have gone a different route. The exploration that they did involved making up more of a history that wasn't even remotely hinted at in the first season.
Mm.
It kind of tacked on some stuff. It made this facility bigger than it was in the first season. There was more going on. There were more people involved. We
Well,
had absolutely zero hints to believe that that was already part of the world with what we were given in the first season.
well, kind of like what you said earlier too, is that the first one was more of a complete picture. They didn't need to have all that extra stuff. They had everything they needed for that season. So now,
Yeah.
when it's such a massive success and you're cleared for all these other seasons, now it's time to start world building, and that's
Yeah,
kind of what they needed.
it
And one of
told
the
you
But
to.
but I think there's a difference between letting something grow and just nailing on something new to make it look bigger.
well, here's the thing with that too, though, is that you can't let something like Stranger Things get stale, and that's something that if they never leave Hawkins, Indiana, there's only so much that you're going to be able to do with the story moving forward as well.
Right.
I mean,
And,
you
and
got
I
to
and
have a
I
little bit
understand
of
that.
diversity and not having. I mean, the first season of Stranger Things was great, but the show is going to be done quickly, and people are going to lose interest if it's the same season each time, essentially.
Sure, but at the same time, like I think some of the charm of the first season was that it all took place in this one small town, like so many other 80s movies about kids before it. And like I can see where that would get stale and everything. But for the most part, with the rest of the season, both with its world building and its location, I just wonder if maybe it went too big too fast.
I mean, we just had the one extra episode of A New City.
Right. But
Um,
watched clear far away.
and I think it did kind of fall into the category of like trilogies. What happened with trilogies or any series, any successful series?
Hmm.
The first is always a great standalone,
Mm-hmm.
but then its massive success relies on it continuing it to build. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, look at hell, even Star Wars. Star Wars Episode 4 was never titled Episode 4 until its huge success. It was supposed to be a standalone single movie, and then it
Right.
did so well, and it got Episode 5, and that ends with a huge cliffhanger. Leaves everything to be resolved
Like
in
the like
Episode 4.
the biggest sequel bait of all time, really.
Yeah.
Yep, you got to see how it ends.
Mm-hmm.
Got to see the last one.
Clickbait. Okay.
But yeah, still going back to Stranger Things, um, I honestly, I feel for Steve, man. I
I
love Steve.
know.
Like I love the way season 1 ended, where it's
Okay.
like they just Nancy and Steve just seem to work out so perfectly,
Yeah.
and
I
then you
Go ahead.
learn more about Nancy and everything else, and it makes sense in season 2.
I do love everything they did with Steve because the thing about that character is they could have pigeonholed him into any bad boy,
Mm-hmm.
pretty boy, boyfriend stereotype that they wanted,
Mhm.
and instead they turned everything on its head with him, and that was
Yeah.
what I loved so much about the first season was that it just consistently broke my expectations for what they were going to do. It's like They
yeah.
like they watched enough 80s movies to be able to get the feel right and get all the cool tropes down, but at the same time they understood enough about all of those tropes to break them and make it still exciting.
Oh yeah.
And they did all of that
Especially
with Steve. Like I was amazed at the end of the first season when they brought him around and made him like a redeemable,
Right?
likable
Yeah.
character. And in the second one, when Nancy and him break up, it's like if it were any other movie, it's like, oh, Nancy did the right thing. But instead you look at this and it's like, you know what? I feel bad for Steve.
Yeah, I
Right?
took Steve's side from the get.
He's like, yeah, you should probably be with him.
And at the same time, they don't do it in such a way where it's like, you don't feel like sure you get mad at Nancy for a little while, but it's like she's her own person too. And after a while, it's like, in their individual directions, you're still rooting for them, but it's like it's still like, yeah, but Steve got burned. Like they put so many good layers into that, and I'm gonna grant you that. Even though I've been kind of ripping on season 2 here, I'm not. There's no way I'm gonna rip on anything they did with Steve.
I
Yeah,
just
and
love how he grew as a character. Because, like, in the first season, he was just sort of, I didn't really care that much about it. But second season, I was like Team Steve. And the best thing to come from season 2 was all the Steve memes. I was
All
like,
the dads.
All the
a
mom
mother
stuff.
goose and her children, it's like Steve's kids. So perfect.
Super babysitter Steve.
Oh, I love Joe Curie so much. And all the little kids from Stranger Things have like
Dustin.
Snapchat and like Instagram, and they're so funny. They're on like a whole other kids.
And
But
the
like,
kid-
go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say that. Well, they weren't actually gonna have Steve in season 2 all that much. From
What?
my understanding is that they had everybody going off in their own different directions, and Steve and Dustin, they weren't really sure what they were going to do with them until they just kind of had them do their thing, and it just worked out amazingly.
They're
And
my two
You
favorites.
just have to put two characters in a room and watch the fireworks.
yeah, well, because there was a lot of great stuff. I really liked, Hopper and Eleven. I thought that was
Mm.
probably the other
Yeah,
best art,
That was another strong point.
other than Sean Austin's character was that his name was Bob.
Bob,
Oh,
Yeah,
Bob.
Bob was the other greatest part of the season, I think.
God bless, man.
the only thing
Yes.
about Bob is like,
Him.
as soon as you saw shit hitting the fan, it's like, yeah, we know Bob's toast.
Yeah,
They're not gonna kill off anybody who didn't die in the first season, but
Man,
Bob's toast.
Bob's
His death though, I was so like all of a sudden like, oh, he
They
did
had
it.
you. They had you there for a moment.
And then they just swept my legs from under me. Oh my
Yeah.
god, I was heartbroken.
I was mad. I was so mad. Poor Steve.
Oh.
What's the name? Joyce?
Poor Steve. Bob's the one who died.
Oh wait, no. That's the
Yeah.
one.
Oh, Bob died.
the
Yeah,
bad
poor Steve.
No,
I'm
no,
saying
I was
Nancy's
still
the
thinking
bad
about
guy.
Steve.
I'm
Yeah,
with you. No, I'm sorry. I'm giving you way too much crap right
What's the
now.
mom's name?
Steve has to live with that pain
No,
though.
Nancy, you're
Bob
bullshit.
doesn't have to worry about the future pain.
That's so mean, Wes.
I'm sorry,
and,
yeah.
and then say what you will about Nancy, but one of the best lines from the whole season was just, "How was the pullout?"
Alright.
I was cringing so hard whenever she was like, "It's bullshit." It's bullshit. Oh my! You're every drunk white girl at a party. It was just bad. It was bad times.
I mean, okay, wrapping up Stranger Things season 2, I'll just say I finished season 2, and then like a week later, Miracle of Sound put out a Stranger Things song, and I was
Of course.
I
now
think I remember watching that one actually.
yeah, and listeners, you do not know how much I love the Miracle of Sound. I
I
mean,
think they do. I think we've illustrated this.
well, this is technically episode 1, so
Oh, okay. Well, we haven't.
Still, we love Miracle of Sound, and we will not stop that. Probably. He keeps coming out with quality stuff. Like I said, I've always loved the Witcher ones, and I had to show Max the Witcher ones before I even knew. I just thought that they were the legit, actual, like, came from CD Projekt Red or something made for the games because they fit so perfectly. And then I come to find out it's just like, oh no, it's just a guy. He likes to just do nerd stuff all the time, and he does it like really professionally and really great.
But don't worry, we'll have a whole episode, I'm sure. Maybe not a whole episode, but easily a topic all about Miracle of Sound. Don't worry. But we do have to get into the next topic. We do have to get into Alex's topic of the Witcher audiobooks. Now, like we said, Miracle of Sound does do some Witcher songs, Witcher 3 especially.
Specifically, yeah.
Yes. But did you know that video game, that all darn video game series, is actually based off a series of books? And Alec has been listening to those books.
Yeah. Um, and the books are something I always wanted to check out because the game was just so, we use the term labor of love a lot, and that's the Witcher 3 game through and through. I mean, I've almost never seen, I don't know if anything ever topped how well crafted that game was, but if you ever have the chance or the time to check it out, which, oh geez, who's got the time for that anymore? Because that's definitely a big blockbuster game it'll keep you busy for a long time, but it's probably one of the most worthwhile journeys and some of the best characters that I've ever seen in a work of fiction. So naturally, since I was so entranced, by the story and by the characters, it's like you got to check out the books and see where it all came from and where it came from first. And like I said, where time is always an issue, what I started doing was I started buying audiobooks, which I just do mine off audible.com, and I just listen to them while I drive. And that's been one of the best ways to get through books, because especially now we're, have New Year's resolution. It's just like, well, I want to read more. But it's like, where do I find the time to read? Well, you listen while you do stuff. Listen to a book while you do your chores. Listen while you're on your way to work, and you can get them done. And the Witcher audiobooks are super well done. I mean, you kind of have to get used to it because the guy does talk in a British accent, and he does all his little accents and his voices and stuff. But it reminds me of forensics. It reminds me of doing speech in high school, and because it's just one guy doing all the voices for the characters, and it's just crazy to listen to him because he gives each character their own voice and their own personality. And to be honest, when it gets to the characters that they had included in the game, in my head, I'm trying to think of what they would sound like if they were saying that in the game, because it is a little bit different. I'm definitely in love with the guy they got to voice Geralt, Geralt of Rivia, the main character. Because Jesus, he's voice like a good voice. I don't know. I can metaphor for that.
Awesome metaphor.
Velvet butter, maybe?
Yeah, velvet butter, maybe.
Yeah.
That's going to be the most difficult thing when they've talked about on and off about a Witcher Netflix series, where I think that's pretty much going to happen now at this point. They just need to find someone to play Geralt, and it's just like, okay, you'll probably find somebody who could, look the part pretty decently, but to sound the part, though, those games just hit the nail on the head. And while you're listening to those books on audiobook and they go through each part, the first two books are actually a collection of short stories instead of a continuous story. And the collection of short stories are very well done, but you see how well that they did the game on that too, and how much they cared about the author and the books as well, because each little sequence that you play through in the game, I mean, it just sounds like, I'm just going through one of the sequences and one of the little stories that was happening in the game, because it felt, so true and so faithful. To me, it felt like the game. But I guess if you'd ever read the books first, I mean, I think the first one was the first book was published in 1992. So it's kind of crazy that they were just able to perfectly capture just the feeling of those novels and the personality of those characters just that wonderfully. And I'm just kind of entranced by it, and I can't stop listening to these things.
That's good.
I always want to play The Witcher 3. That's like one reason why I want to get a PS4 but I don't have the money, and I know how much time I would waste playing the game, having seen some gameplay of it.
Yeah, it's definitely a commitment. There's a lot of time involved. You could probably do the thing where you ignore all the side stuff. You can leave a huge part of the story in the world that they've built, because it is a massive world that has been established here, and a massive world
Mm.
that's been built with lots of great history, lots of great lore. Where, imagine Max, where we were talking about, Bright, and they just casually mention these things that happen in history that you
Uh,
know about, like just watching Bright and just being able to at any time open up a little interactive history of what's going on in the world and learn a little bit about it. And one of the great things about Witcher 3 is that, it's the third game in the franchise, but it really didn't feel like you needed the extra games input, even though there was lots of appearances from characters in the past. You still feel like you adjust to that character as it's introduced to you, and know that that's somebody that Geralt has seen before, and that they have a way that they're going to interact just due to their past that they've had. And feels like I said, just one of the best crafted games as far as just feeling part of a world that just feels alive and feels real and actual.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. I love when you find something like that so just immersive and good.
Yeah, and
I
it's
mean,
hilarious too. There's been some times where I'm just rolling because it's just the fact that Geralt is just like this perfect sarcastic toneless.
I never heard that they were thinking a Netflix series.
I've heard about it on and off. I've heard it was pretty for sure that they were going to do the Netflix series, which if you've ever seen any of the promotional videos that they came out with for Witcher 3, just visually stunning. That's kind of what everybody's hoping for and what they have in mind for the Netflix series. Is if you've ever seen, I want to say their trailers, but they're little visual shorts that are, like I said, they're just beautiful to watch. Also,
I'll have to find those.
yeah, I can send you some. Maybe post some links for some of those, but they're definitely worth their entertainment value.
Nice.
If you've ever liked, the Supernatural, if you've ever seen the show Supernatural and that kind of monster hunting, that's essentially what Geralt does as part of the stories. He's a witcher. He's a guy that is paid to take care of the ghosts and the monsters and that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
In a little bit more of a fantasy world rather than Midwest United States like in Supernatural, but that's about my best comparison.
Hmm. Man, like, I don't know where I'm going.
Well, like I said, definitely if you put the time into it, it's definitely something that you'll never regret, and it's something that you can immerse yourself in
I mean,
pretty
with the
easily.
books, too. Like,
With the books too, like I said, it's all really supplemental. I've played through a little bit of Witcher 2. I found a copy at a local video game store here that I've only gone a short way through that, but if nothing else, of all of the Witcher material out there, I would say definitely check out Witcher 3, and that'll be worth your time.
cool.
You could probably just do that and just get a fantastic experience on that on your own.
Nice.
Awesome. So, I mean, I think there's huge amount of recommendations here. You
Mm-hmm.
got movies to watch, you got Netflix to watch, and you also got, well, some audiobooks or video games.
And some video games.
Yeah, got the whole swath of things.
Oh yeah.
Miracle Town. Music, check it out.
Oh, yeah.
And music. There we go. Miracle of Sound. Soundtrack for Coco.
I mean, watch Coco too.
And watch Coco too.
I mean, I'm excited for all the colors.
I love it. It's so pretty.
But I think anything else about Witcher?
Um, No, I think I've said all about that I need to say. I can go into more what the story's about, but I think you guys would enjoy finding that out for yourself if you ever get around to it.
Awesome. Oh well, yeah, like we've said, check out all these things. Waste your life, or not really waste it, but
No, you'll enjoy it. It's not a
yeah,
waste.
Oh yeah, I
enjoy
think
your
that's
life
that's
with all
good.
these things. And of course, Miracle of Sound that was referenced, and he actually is our intro, midtro, and our outro. So you'll be hearing a little bit more of Miracle of Sound, Friends by Miracle of Sound, his song for Guardians of the Galaxy. That's right. Um, Definitely again recommend it, but also check out the things that are in the theaters right now. I think we talked plenty about Star Wars, Jumanji, Bright on Netflix, Coco if it's still available,
It's
Mm-hmm.
and
a
yeah, when you get
yeah,
home.
it's a great time to be a nerd because the nerds have inherited the earth, and all of these great movies are coming out. I did make a little bit of a list of everything that's going to be coming out soon that you guys can get excited for. We've already gone through Justice League and Thor 3 and Star Wars and all that good stuff. But some stuff that we're looking forward to here coming up that we'll probably be talking about is we got Black Panther coming up in
Oh, I'm
February.
pumped for
Oh yeah, that's going to be a good one. We got Infinity War coming in May. Uh,
that.
we have New Mutant in April, which looks really interesting. The whole X-Men slate looks interesting because we'll have Dark Phoenix and Deadpool 2 that are also coming
Oh
out
yeah.
this year.
Is this
And
all on a list like right in front of you right now?
yeah, this is one that I wrote down. And then the next Spider-Man movie,
Oh yeah.
Spider-Man's
we'll
Revenge.
have a Venom movie coming out supposedly in October, I think. So that'll be one to check out. And then a book that we've mentioned several times, Ready Player One, was the first audiobook that I ever
Oh yeah.
downloaded. And
I
that'll
forgot
come
about
out
that.
in March, and that'll be one to see, I believe.
Yes. So many things to check out, and we can only tell you about 4 things at a week, every other week, I should say. This is a bi-weekly podcast, so check you out in 2 weeks. Later.
Bye.
Bye.
Ah.